There he is.
Ah,
Hey, how are you? There you are.
Fine. You have to make allowances for old age here. You know, I think I'm at least a year older than you. Still catching up with technology here.
Am I? Are you a year older? I'm 54.
No, well, actually, I'm 58.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Time's flying. Hey, okay. We're gonna have to. I'm gonna pour. I've got to. Ooh. There it goes. You got to get that into the microphone.
There's an art for those.
Yeah. I haven't quite learned it.
Does this one have the ball in it?
Yes.
Yeah. I remember, like, me and my friends were always confused by that. Like, it's like, what's inside of there?
Nitrogen gas, apparently.
Right.
And now you've got to leave it sit.
Yeah, let it.
Oh, yeah.
A minute and a half, 2 minutes.
Minute and a half.
You've got to allow the priest's collar to appear at the top, so it goes white. Oh, you've got a pup.
We got a Chihuahua.
Little Chihuahua.
Is this new one, or have you had him all the time?
We've had her about what?
3
years now. Yeah.
Oh,
since the Camino.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How are you, Tammy?
Good. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
It's been way too long.
I know. Yeah, it's our plans have kind of been disrupted. We were supposed to go back on Camino last year, like yourself, but it didn't work out.
Yeah. Are you doing another segment of the original Camino? Was that the plan?
Yeah. I'm gonna start from where I left off last time. Do you remember I left you, I think, in Nahra?
Yes.
So I'm gonna do Nahra to carry on the Los Condes whenever I can.
Yeah, we remember that very fondly. We hit a big storm going into that when we were on the second trip with you. And it's funny how walking it twice, Diarmuid, I remember incidences with him, and then I remember the incidences with her. And that I remember and carry on Las Condes, early morning cold, getting this racing to get some coffee in the morning with him, and it was just so cold. Yeah. And then with her, we hit a storm as we were approaching, and it was so violent that we raced into a pub, and you remember you ordered whiskey.
Good choice.
Yeah, and she's not normally one to just go in and say, I have whiskey.
I was wet.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, cheers.
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 Gotcha. Okay, guys.
So this is kind of a unique Beyond the Pale episode because normally it's just Tammy and I. We've got Gabriel here because for listeners, even though this is going to be just a conversation, Diarmuid, I also want to share this with Beyond the Pale listeners. And occasionally I do the Camino Tales, and various people that even some you would have remembered have been on the show before, just chatting about why we walked the Camino, some of the anecdotes from it. And I mean, for us, we met you. I'm trying to think exactly, because we didn't meet in 2015 in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, did we?
No, we met along the way. I remember my first recollection of you guys. Gabriel had his headphones on, and he was walking along, and he took a wrong turn, and he's just walking, and you were behind him. You realize he's taking the wrong turn, but he's about 100 meters ahead of you at this point in time. So you go, Gabriel, and he's just walking along there, and so you had to run after him and kind of bring him back to the right track, because he was going along one side of the river, and the path took you across to the other side of the river.
Right. Man, I don't even remember that.
I remember a number of times with that similar situation with me being, Gabriel, take those damn earphones out.
Yeah. But I always remember the day I arrived in Biarritz airport. So we're waiting I was just standing there on my own. I knew nobody. I was waiting for a bus to Saint-Jean. And I just got on. I saw an Irish guy get on the bus, and I figured, okay, well, he's going the right way. So I get on the bus, and he's paid his fare, and he sits down at the back of the bus. So I said to the bus driver in French, I says, "Is this the bus to Bayonne?" And he says, "No." He says, "It's the next one, number 14 or whatever." So I said to the guy at the back of the bus, "Are you going to the Camino?" And he says, "Yeah." I said, "You're on the wrong bus." So he had no French. So we got off. So we started chatting. And then as we're chatting, this girl beside us said, "Oh, you're from Ireland." Yeah. So we started chatting. And you know what? We never left each other's side right until the day that they left, I think 3 or 4 days before I did.
Right.
So it's that kind of thing. You kind of pick up people, you make very, very good friends.
Yeah.
And then the day they left, they both left, and I can't think of the name of the town.
It's not
But they
we're not talking about our mutual friends, are we? Marcel and Enemy?
No.
Okay.
These were Noel and Norma.
Okay.
Noel, big tall guy, and Norma, short. Yeah, but they left by bus one evening at the end of a day's walk, and I was kind of there on my own. And so I'm walking back to the refuge, and you guys were going into a restaurant, and you said, "Here, join us." And you know, it's that kind of a thing. And although I didn't know you from Adam, it was like, join us, kind of.
Yeah.
This is the family kind of thing, you know. And you were there with, I think, Marcel and Nico. Thinking. And then
Oh,
there's a Finnish girl there,
yes.
Annika.
Yeah. Well, there was the Finnish girl was I've got it written down. The girl that had done clown work.
Oh yeah, what was her name?
Yeah.
Oh, now it's driving me crazy because I feel bad because we had such a great
lot of
time with her.
Yeah.
Not in your journal.
It is in my journal. Yeah. I've got it somewhere. But yes, the Finnish girl. You know, great story. Dearmuid, I probably told you this, but Gabriel and I, the last time we saw her was the day before we went to the St. Jean where we slept in the bell tower. And the reason we did that was she had messaged us and said, we've got to, oh no, she had told me she was going to do it. And then we never saw her again. So we were with her for about the first week. We were in the first hostel in Saint Jean Pierre de Port together.
Yeah.
And we had all this wonderful encounter, and then we never saw her again. And then suddenly on the last, when Gabriel and I were taking the train back to Madrid, she was on the train.
Well, I remember you shared that on Facebook or maybe on your blog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I remember running into her on the train.
Okay, Gabriel, how was college?
It's going good, yeah. I mean,
Slide the whole-
it's harder recently because of the whole situation, but yeah, doing a very practical course like music production where like a lot of it's in the studio, like learning how to use like, the recording room and stuff. It's not so easy doing it online and trying to learn all the stuff that you need to know.
I'd say so.
But everybody's going through it, so
yeah.
I think like years from now, like it'll be like a thing. It's like, oh yeah, I was like, I went to school during the COVID time, so that's why my grades aren't so good.
Oh, you sound ready with that one.
The whole generation.
You know, the worrying thing is that in 20 years' time, you guys will be running the world, and they'll be like, "Hey, we didn't have an education."
Yeah.
or we'll be saying, remember when people still went to school?
You remember shaking hands?
Yeah.
That was something.
Yeah, remember back when I was a kid, we used to shake hands. So you're under lockdown there. So what's your situation? What can you do? What can't you do?
Well, you're supposed to stay within 5 kilometers of home. You are really, they're asking you to stay in your home, which is fine by me because you know, my work would involve going over and back to the UK. And there's no way I'm going to go over there. You know, if you go over there, if you have to go over there, when you come back, you've got to take a test, have a proper test and a clear result within 72 hours. So you'd spend your time taking tests simply to come home for the weekend, you know?
Right, yeah.
So I'm going to do what I can online and call up customers, but I'm happy enough to sit home, contacting people.
Yeah, especially if you're, it allows for a little more contemplation and slowing down of the lifestyle. I've talked to a number of people. During this whole time, I'm on day 256 of Duolingo learning French, and I started it back in April. Just doing the app every single day, and thinking, during this whole time of spending indoors, I don't want it to be just how many series of Netflix I watched. Can I get something beneficial out of this, some kind of skill?
How's that going? Are you fluent there yet?
No, and I don't think Duolingo will ever make you fluent. I'm a big believer. You've got to submerge yourself into a geography that actually speaks that language. But I think what it is really given me a nice foundation. And if I ever do, which I'd love to spend some time in France, the foundation will definitely be there. The vocabulary is there, conjugation of words, and it's been very beneficial. But the long and short is, no, I'm not fluent, nor will I be.
Yeah. Well, in Ireland here, it's mandatory to take Irish, what we call Irish, Gaelic.
Right.
And in 14 years of Gaelic tuition, I learned more German in 2 months when I worked in the factory over there with nobody around me speaking English. And I can quite happily converse in German after 2 months, and that was 30 odd years ago, 1982.
Wow.
But 40 years of Irish because nobody speaks it.
Right.
And my mother was a native speaker. She learned English when she came up to our part of the country. And still until she died there last year, she spoke English as a foreign language.
Wow.
But she never spoke it to us.
Right.
Why bother?
That's what Tammy, if Tammy was listening right now, she's going to take care of the dogs. But if she was on right now, she'd be telling you in her region in outside Louisiana, in New Orleans, outside of in Cajun, Louisiana, her grandparents all spoke French to each other. Her parents' generation could understand it but not speak it, and her generation's lost it entirely.
I know, it's such a shame. Such a shame. Yeah. And my dad still had a couple of words that would have come from his parents and grandparents, and they would have no concept of actually what the words meant.
Yeah.
But the words were there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's unfortunate, and I've never heard spoken Gaelic. I don't know that I've ever heard it before.
I had a friend who could speak it fluently.
Yeah. It sounds like nothing, because it's really outside of all other constructs.
Right.
If I said the Lord, if I said the Lord's Prayer, it would go something like this: Ornyahar atar nyav, gunefer danam, godagad the real, gunefer the holler and talamor nefer nyav, ornaron lehul tordunu, agus no ligshin, gahu, oxer shin. And the only word you get there is amen.
You're right.
There is no common words in English.
It sounds almost like a record being spun backward.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, that's like when you listen to Polish.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah, it's unfortunate though that some of those languages are being lost. Let me ask you because on Beyond the Pale, it's life and it's faith and life through the lens of pilgrimage. And you and I've had some faith discussions, and even our interactions on Facebook. We've occasionally just wanted to, maybe you could share. Have you always been a person of faith, or has there been some kind of what's the Reader's Digest version of what Diarmuid's faith journey has been?
I brought up Catholic, and really, it was drummed into us as Catholics, the catechism, the chapter and verse. And in the late 70s, there was a movement in Ireland, and it was called the Charismatic movement.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to be invited to a retreat. Now, I was in boarding school, So they had a number of retreats where they would take 6 guys from our school, 6 people from 5 other schools, bring them together in this priest's house, and then they would, you know, just pray. And I saw guys coming back, and they were transformed, really transformed. Generosity, you know, love, and you never, these things wouldn't really be common in a boarding school. You know? I saw guys coming back transformed, and it wasn't that I wanted some of that. It was, well, there's a lot of girls there. And when we went, there were 6 boys from my boarding school, 6 girls from Loretto College, 6 girls from Cootehill, 6 girls, and it was 30 girls, 6 boys. And it was, but at the same time, apart altogether from that, I found actually what it means, what belief, you know, when people say good news, it's hard to, you know, tell people, oh, here's the good news, and they're thinking, that sounds a little, you know, makey-uppy to me. But really, the good news comes through people. When people share their faith and actually act out their faith. So, but the funny thing was, the charismatic movement livened and brought life to the Catholic Church in Ireland. Now, the Catholic Church was not a progressive church. It was not a welcoming church. It was not a church that told you that God loved you. It would tell you that God would damn you if you don't do this and that. And that, to me, this was a revelation. Okay, but it seems to me that the Catholic Church tried to put their stamp on the charismatic movement, and it kind of disappeared. Now, it really disappeared. So, you know, fast forward 10, 15, 16 years later, I've been to the States, I've been to California, came back, and I was, you know, but my interest had been piqued in all that time. I was still a Catholic, but I always remember being in church one morning, and there was a particularly authoritarian priest, and he was kind of laying down the law. He was saying, if you don't believe in this part of Catholicism, in this part of Catholicism, in this and this and this, then you've no right to be here. And I agreed with him entirely, because a lot of the stuff that they were actually laying down the law for was actually not in the Bible. And it was makey-uppy stuff, add-on stuff. And in the Bible it says, you shall not add one whit to this. And here was Catholic Church. They were, you know, making stuff up wholesale. And I had to agree with him. I had no right to be there, not believing all the makey-uppy stuff that they had added on to the message of the Bible. So I said, the following morning, one of my employees, he was a born-again Christian. He was in a Christian church on the East Coast. So I asked him, are there any Bible-based churches near at hand? So he pointed me in the direction of the Cootehill Christian Fellowship. So I went there the following Sunday, and it was as if I had come home. Here are people who read the Bible, believed in the message, and had that kind of same welcoming love and non-judgmentalism that I'd seen in the years before, you know. So, and that really, that's where I come from, you know.
Yeah, that's what. So, from when you left the Catholic Church, did you find like a faith tradition, like the charismatic movement? Did you find a church that kind of resonated with that, and then go in that direction?
Yeah. I mean, the Pentecostal church is growing and growing and growing in Ireland. You know, I mean, it's not huge in terms of numbers. I mean,
right.
You know, the Catholic Church would still have nominally 90% of all Irish people, but in terms of people who are active, that's really a fraction of that.
Right.
Whereas in the Pentecostal church, what I find is that there's a huge amount of the leaders in the Pentecostal church actually came out of that charismatic movement. You know, the charismatic movement in the Catholic Church brought them to God, it brought them to Jesus, but they found nothing, you know, it wasn't a welcoming home, so to speak. So when when they found a Pentecostal church, again, like me, they actually find this is where I belong.
That's, I mean, Tammy and I come out of that tradition. We, the late 70s for us, the born again experience, we came from a Lutheran background, but
We
it
were
was that,
Catholic.
Tammy was Catholic, I was Lutheran, but we went
Yeah.
to, we moved outside of Detroit, and our neighbor invited us to his Lutheran church because we were Lutherans. We thought, well, we got to find a Lutheran church. And, but we didn't realize it was a Lutheran church that had been hit by the Charismatic movement. And the pastor spoke in tongues. That was our first experience with the whole Charismatic movement. And it was, it was a powerful move of God. And a lot of people came to Christ in that during that time. And that's why, and not that I really want this to go political, but it's, as someone who's been part of that tradition now for 40 some years, it's really pained me to see where that tradition has ended up. At some point, I feel they've gone off the rails. And my hope is that there could be another charismatic movement or some kind of movement to kind of, reset everything back, because something's gone seriously wrong in that tradition, in my opinion.
And it does look to me in the States like they embrace the Old Testament, which is judgmentalism and we are right and the others are wrong and blah, blah, blah. With Jesus' message, and Jesus quite clearly, says, when he's asked, who is my neighbor? And Jesus picks the enemy of the Jewish people, the Samaritans. This is your neighbor. And you've got, if you don't take that on board, you really are not aspiring to Christianity.
To me, that's the foundational tenet of, I love how I've had this pastor named Brian Zahn on my podcast before. And I love, he shared at one point, he said, Steve, if you go and just ask some non-Christian, someone who categorically says they're not a Christian, but you ask them, what did Jesus teach? Almost without hesitation, their first thing would be teaching love, or to love your enemy. Like that's the foundational teaching of Jesus. He says, but if you ask a Christian what Jesus taught, often you'll get some atonement theories ascribed to Paul, not those foundational teachings that Jesus was going around and sharing with. And that's been my experience, is how the tradition that I've been part of for so many years has really missed the main thing. They've got their eyes off the ball.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah. What is the, so you're kind of linked to that community viewing America from Ireland. What's the perception among some of your peers and colleagues, maybe of the Christian faith, looking in at the States and what's happening? What are any thoughts there?
We have loads of thoughts. We're a small island, so we are kind of caught between Europe, which we're delighted to be part of.
Yeah.
England, which is our neighbor, and really a lot of where our culture will come from. The language, the TV, the football, all that influences us. And then there's the States, where we all have family in the States.
Yeah.
Everybody in Ireland has family in the States. Do you know what I mean? And so, and I have family over there, some of whom are dyed in the wool Republicans, absolute Trump fans, and then some who just couldn't even bring themselves to say the word.
Yeah.
Trump. But from our point of view here, I don't think people in the States realize actually how not left wing Ireland is, but even Bernie Sanders would be considered right wing in Ireland.
Really? Wow.
It's not that we are communists or socialists.
Yeah.
It's that there is an understanding that you cannot let anybody fall through the cracks, fall through the net. And although our record, building houses is not great. We're not building enough houses to make sure everybody has a house. So a lot of people for the last couple of years have been accommodated. Families that have no home have been accommodated in hotels. They're not, you're reluctant to let them live on the streets or we're not perfect, far from it. But our politics are mostly left wing here. So when you look at somebody like Trump, who his message and his total lack of humility,
Yeah.
does not go down well here. I'm sorry, Americans, but that's
No, it's yeah. It doesn't go down for a lot of Americans either. It's really, really hard to say, but anyhow, I don't want the focus of the podcast to be on politics, but obviously with what's going on right now, I was curious from the charismatic tradition, because obviously that forms such a base. I mean, not to keep going down the road, but I've had people tell me, Steve, I mean, charismatic, God is going to move this week before January 20th. God's going to move. Your mind's going to be blown, and God is going to keep Trump in, because Trump is God's man. And I just want to think, what planet are you living on? At what point did you drink the Kool-Aid? Because, and I'm shocked by some of the people. Like, there's certain people that if they said or did those kind of things, I'd be like, well, yeah, it's been kind of part and parcel as long as I've known you. Others, I am shocked, where I think, how did you buy into this? And so I just had a private encounter with an old friend who I really respect his, got a great family, great children, very respected, a very thoughtful man, not some, radical guy. And he wrote me about 2 pages when I asked him to explain. And he, and some of that QAnon conspiracy, he didn't go full bore, but definitely he'd been influenced, completely convinced it was rigged, and nothing is going to change his mind.
Yeah. And you see, this is where I despair for the United States. Because when I lived there, I lived in San Diego from 88 to 91. And I always remember when George Bush was elected. And I had a conversation with a neighbor who was from New York, he was Jewish, and he was very, very passionate Democratic voter. And we had a conversation when George Bush was elected. And he said, I was really impressed with the acceptance speech that George Bush first gave. And, and he kind of opened his mind to it and wished him well. I can't see that now. Can't see, it is so divided. So divided. And, I really think that, there were Russian connections there. And listen, I hate to be a conspiracy theorist, but I think that it certainly is in Russia's, it would be in their interests if the United States was irreparably divided. And if Europe was irreparably divided, they don't need to defeat the United States militarily. They just divide you. They do the same here. If they can knock a couple more significant countries out of the European bloc, well, they've done their job. They don't need to defeat us. Just divide us. And that's going back to prehistory. When the British came in here, the British didn't come in here with one big battle to defeat us all. They did it one at a time. And in actual fact, when any 2 of our tribes had a disagreement, they picked one side, they let us fight, defeat each other. Pretty soon, they owned us. And then they found it so easy to divide and conquer that they went and did that everywhere. Everywhere. India was not conquered as one monolith. No, they let them divide and they conquered them little by little. So it's a lesson in history that the more divided the states get, the weaker and weaker and weaker it gets. And the rest of the world honestly has laughed I'm sure China are laughing at it right now.
Oh, yeah, it's
Oh, yeah. I mean, even Iran are having a good old snigger there, saying, "Oh, look, you talk about democracy. Look at the Capitol building."
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be preachy, but
No. It's that's to me, America has lost its moral authority to be able to speak into situations. Before Trump, no country's perfect, but there was some agreed upon values that people could respect around the world. And it's like you said, hey, and people have heard me say this on the podcast before. I was a solid Republican. When Bill Clinton was elected in 1992, I was not happy. I was really not happy. Yeah. But when he came out to visit Hong Kong, Tammy and I went out to see him. We were excited. He's the American president. There was never for one moment that I didn't think he wasn't our president, that he didn't have my respect, that he didn't have, he was a flawed individual, but he also, I knew that he respected certain aspects of the Constitution and what our country stood for. And I felt that about every single president in my lifetime that I've experienced until the one who's sitting there now. He is without any, I'm trying to think of the word, but I just can't wait until he's gone. I'm counting the hours and the minutes because what the hardest thing is watching the division and how people still support him. Despite what he has done since Election Day, people continue to support him. My whole attitude would be, okay, let's say we disagree on everything that has happened the last 4 years. What he's done the last 2 months alone to undermine the value system of the country, to be the first one to not commit to a peaceful transfer of power. And what really is painful is he knows there was no election fraud, at least not at the level of systemic fraud, that he knowingly has drugged the country through the mire for his own narcissistic vanity, to me is unforgivable.
Yeah. For everybody else, it's unbelievable. How can this happen? This is the premier democracy in the world.
And they're convinced, though. They're convinced, half of America feels that, I mean, I watch some of these Christian programs. Tammy will see me put some of these Christian programs on YouTube that are giving these prophetic words about Trump still going to be in on the 21st. And they are convinced that if Biden gets in, if Kamala gets in, that Christian liberties are going to be eliminated. Their ability to congregate as a church is going to be slowly whittled away. I mean, who thinks with any rationality at all that Christians are not going to be allowed to meet together after COVID? Yeah. They believe that COVID is being orchestrated as a precursor to them not being able to gather at all. I've heard them say it. Oh, this is just the initial steps. This is their testing ground. This is how they're going to stop the church from meeting together. And I'm thinking, what planet do you have to be on? Biden's a Catholic, for God's sake. Yeah. You know, what is he not going to be going to church anymore? It's the vast, but they have got it in their minds. They're absolutely convinced. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So. Yeah.
But they have to invent a threat. You know, if you want to control, you've got to invent threats, and those threats are being invented. You know, it's yeah. I don't know. You'd want to just go over and smack them and say, listen, you know, reach across the house to shake hands. You're all in this together. Will you make it work?
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, Diarmuid, is every single person that I know that is Republican and supports Trump, every one of them is convinced that the Democrats are basically the socialists, the gays, the immigrants, the environmentalists, the I'm trying to think who else. They're all the Philistines are at the city gate.
Antifa.
Mm-hmm. They're all at the city gate, and they're trying to steal everything that you hold dear. And they've convinced themselves of that. They've worked themselves into a frenzy, and nothing can convince them. Nothing can convince them. Whereas with me, I have issues with the Democratic Party, but I think they also bring some really good things to the table. And I'm looking forward to seeing what Biden and Kamala could do. And I could see myself voting for a Republican again in the future. Like, I'm not tribal. I'm going to go for whoever's best. Now, personally, I think the Republican Party needs a timeout, and they need to figure out who they are and what they want to be. Only then would I consider it. But, you know, Mitt Romney again, somebody in the manner of a John McCain, somebody, you know, these guys who are thoughtful, who reach across the aisle, who build bridges, who don't see the who see the Democrats as the loyal opposition and not the spawn of Satan.
Yeah, and I would add to that, somebody who appreciates the truth. The truth has just lost its currency in the States.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the truth is whatever you want to believe or whatever you've seen on QAnon at any point in time, and it can change from week to week. But, you know, as Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. The truth is... How can a lie all of a sudden become the truth? It's like, you know, 1984.
Or you just lie so often that it just becomes. I was listening to Sam Harris. I don't know.
You feel like twice, and all of a sudden it's believable.
Yeah. I don't know if you know Sam Harris. He's I think he's a neurophysicist and philosopher, and he's on a lot of these talking head shows. I really respect him. I listen to his podcast all the time. Anyhow, I was listening to him this morning, and he said the whole idea of whenever you encounter somebody who's a Trump person and you hit him with the lie, and then they come back at you and they say, well, Biden did this, and Biden, he's like, if you have bought into the equivalency that Biden is the equivalent of Trump, because what they'll fall back into is, all politicians are corrupt. You know, once you start hitting them on that's all politicians are corrupt. He says, if you believe that, you are part of the problem of the misinformation which has plagued society. He said, in order for Biden to be the equivalent of Trump, he would have to go on Twitter and say this in all bold caps, the CIA has orchestrated COVID to eliminate the Black population of America. That's the level of bullshit. And that was the word he used. He would have to be subscribing to for it to even approach the level of what we've seen come out of Trump.
Yeah. Steve, I'm asking you, how do you reverse from that point? How do you arrive in 4 years' time that everybody is back actually trusting science and finding lies and untruths to be actually a bad thing? You know, how do you get back there? Because you know, in the last 4 years, it's got so far away from the truth, and everything twisted and conspiracy theories at the yin yang. I mean, I just don't know how you can reverse that.
Yeah, you know, here's something I remember from the Bible, Diarmuid. And I hate to sound pessimistic because there's pessimism in this and there's hope in this. But there was that generation that went into the desert out of Egypt with Moses. And they were still too bound to an old system. And God had to have them wander. He wouldn't let that generation go into the promised land because they were not willing to do the things that needed to be done in order to live out what it meant to live in the promised land. They still had too much Egypt in their heart. And so the Bible literally says they had to wander in the desert and let that generation die out. And to me, I think this has an application for the UK. It's a generalization, but I feel there's a generation, 55 and older, and I put myself in that generation, that almost has to die out. That I get encouraged by the younger generation that's coming up that are not tainted with some of these ideas from 3 generations ago and can't seem to grow out of that. I know a generation in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. And some people have been able to make the turn, and it's always great to be able to talk to somebody who's really come into a new understanding of, I believe, where God is taking things. It's more diverse, it's more pluralistic, it's more inclusive, it's more compassionate, it's more empathetic. And I think that's a reality. That's a promised land that generation doesn't really actually want to go to.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. Yeah. It's unfortunate. See, we were going to talk Camino Tales, and now we're talking. But I've enjoyed this. No, but I've enjoyed this. I think I'm already thinking how I'm going to change the title of this.
I do tend to go on. I know that.
Drinking Guinness and with Diarmuid.
Trying this foreign extra stout. This one's got a little bit of an extra little
foreign extra. Hey, well, we can always come back to politics, but before I forget, there's a couple of walks down memory lane I wanted to share with you. Remember that?
Okay. Wi-Fi here. Oh yeah, I saw that. Oh, that's
Okay.
brilliant. Yeah.
They got it now.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. I remember that so well.
Was I there with you?
You were. You're not
yeah.
in that picture. You're in this picture here.
Yeah, I remember that.
Because this is basically the same evening.
Those are cool glasses.
No.
Okay.
You talking about yourself.
Okay.
I am talking about.
Here we go. Let's see if we can get this one up. You see that one?
Oh yeah. I remember that.
I remember that.
For listeners that are getting the audio of this, we are in Los Arcos. It's a bunch of us pilgrims around together. And that evening, Diarmuid, I don't know if you remember, after we had these beers at the table, we went and we got some chorizo, we got some wine, and we sat in that other picture on that grassy embankment.
That's
and,
right.
And I don't know if you remember the conversation we had, but I've included in the book, I'm actually still writing about that time. But we were going to go to the Pilgrim's Mass that night in the cathedral or the church that was there. And I said how I was going to take communion. And Jude had said, you're really not supposed to unless you're Catholic. And we all had a big discussion on the right and wrong of a non-Catholic taking communion. And I remember saying, I'm not trying to be deceptive, but you don't really have a lot of choice of churches on the Camino besides Catholic. And I really wanted to take the Eucharist. And, we were having discussions of, who would Christ turn away from his table if he wanted to have the Lord's Supper. And Jude was saying, I'm not Catholic myself, but I worked at a Catholic school and they're very serious about this. And then an old Spanish lady who didn't speak English came, and if you remember this, she had a couple dogs, or she had a dog, and she motioned to the chorizo, and Marcel cut her off a section of the chorizo, thinking it was going to her, and then she tossed it to her dog.
I remember that, yeah.
And we all sat there kind of in a look of wonder for a second, and then I looked at Jude and I said, if she can give her dog that good chorizo sausage, I should be able to take the Lord's Supper. And Jude says, objection withdrawn.
Absolutely. Funny, come here, let me just show you this, right? I was just reading this book here, okay?
Okay.
It's a book, Mary McAleese. She was president, she was the last president before this guy. And it's her life story. It's actually amazing life, born in Belfast and lived through the troubles, had friends shot dead and stuff like that. But she, as president, was instrumental in bringing the sides together. And Bill Clinton was very influential in bringing the sides together. So he's regarded as a hero up there. But she, as part of bringing the two traditions together, I mean, she does talk a lot about that, about actually taking communion in a Protestant church, and how there was a huge backlash from Catholics in Ireland, that right. she would cross the line. But when you think about it, would Jesus,
yeah,
when he took the bread, he gave it to Judas, knowing full well,
and
I mean, he came to save the world. but people make him in their own image, and that's what I was saying earlier on. People make God in their own image rather than us being made in the image of God.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
really, it's stuff that kind of nonsense.
We really project ourselves onto God, and you can always kind of pick up the type of God someone follows by how they personify him, and it's, you're right. As someone said once, God makes us in his image, and then we turn around and return the favor.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
So, oh man. Oh, I'm going to have a little more Guinness. This really is good. I don't drink Guinness enough. I do remember having it on tap though in Belfast.
That's the
Right.
best way to
It
have
is
it.
an acquired taste.
Yeah.
Not everybody likes it, but when you get a good pint, there's nothing like it. I mean, of all, people talk about craft beers and all this kind of, but Guinness is actually, to me, it's as good as any craft beer.
Yeah.
But because we have it, we have it in every pub you go to, you can't take it for granted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
I've been in Manchester almost 3 years now, and I still have not had a proper pint of Guinness.
Well, that's because
I
you
did
may
when
not
I was
get
in
a good pint of
Manchester.
Guinness in Manchester.
No, because I have English friends here in Hong Kong, and they refuse to drink Guinness here, but they'll drink it in Manchester because it's better than Hong Kong, at
Okay,
least.
well then you've got a good pub that knows how to pour it.
Mhm.
Yeah, not of spoons.
I just realized I somehow my mic had flipped off, and so we'd been on the laptop mic for a while. So we'll see how that sounds in a little bit. Actually, though, it might be better with these guys. You did a lot of the talking, which is good, but it might help with
that you can hear us.
that you can hear these guys a little better. So we'll see.
Right.
So, well, anyhow, we probably shouldn't keep you too long, Diarmuid, but this has been great to catch up. We shouldn't let it go so many years without doing it again. Do you have any once the COVID's done, are you gonna head back down to the Camino and do that next segment, eh?
Yeah, it's probably going to be this time next year, or like Easter next year.
Yeah.
Because I suppose people who have medical conditions or whatever are not going to get vaccinated until probably the second half of this year.
Yeah.
So I think you're probably going to have to present some kind of a vaccination passport, to move freely.
That's what we're hearing as well.
Yeah. So this year, I'll probably holiday at home, go to the West Coast. I had a great time. I had a great time down the West Coast last year. We just went down there and we cycled and we windsurfed and we walked hill walks and it was fine.
Nice.
But you still look forward to getting abroad, a different culture. I wouldn't mind going to France. Maybe take the ferry over. Go down along the coast of Brittany or whatever. But definitely the Camino as soon as I can.
Yeah.
I miss that.
You know what? Let's try to make it a goal. You're slowly making your way to Santiago de Compostela, one segment at a time. And so since we started with you in 2015, Saint Jean Pied de Port, maybe we should make a goal that when you finally are doing the last segment, we come down and celebrate with you.
Hey, yes. Yeah, that'd be brilliant.
Yep.
And this time I would look to go to Finisterre.
Oh, yeah.
And all the time I've been there, I've never gone there.
See, she didn't get to go. We didn't have time to go in 2017, but Gabriel and I went.
Yeah, I took the bus though. You walked the rest of the way to Finisterre, but I took the bus there.
We didn't walk to Finisterre though.
You walked to.
We didn't quite have time. I was trying to do so that I could walk from Santiago to Finisterre, but I doubled back so that I could stay with Gabriel, and it was the best call I ever made because I know he's gonna go, getting sentimental, but we really did have, at least from a father's point of view, like the best. I look back and I think, oh man, if I hadn't made that decision, I have so many memories.
You were ahead, and so you were trying to get there and finish.
Yeah, and Tammy, I remember one night, I was a day ahead of Gabriel, and I'd gone out, and we were in Galicia, and I was with a Polish pilgrim and a couple of Americans. I think it's the only time on the Camino I drank enough that I got a little drunk. Like we drank a lot of white wine that night. We would usually drink wine most nights, but this was a night that I drank a little bit more. And I got back to the albergue, and Tammy and Gabriel were kind of messaging back and forth on our shared link. And Tammy's then privately going, "You're going ahead without your son." And I'm suddenly, and he's going, "Yeah, Dad moved on without me." And suddenly I felt like such a heel because I'm sitting there a little buzzing going, "I'm the worst dad in the whole world," you know?
I do think that like the times I got to spend alone on the walk were some of the best parts, because it gave me a chance to like experience like traveling by myself and like making connections on my own.
Yeah.
So
But since he planned it, before you were born,
that was coast to
That was the
coast.
coast to coast.
Okay,
That was the
well,
coast to coast. But it was still,
nonetheless, it was a big moment, and you shouldn't.
I know, no,
gone
I'm glad
back-
we finished together. But
yeah, we
Santiago
did really
alone.
good.
yeah, I'm glad we did have.
But
those, like,
that's a
days
long way of
apart.
saying is I didn't walk to Finisterre. So what I did was there was a Danish guy, Thomas, who we'd spent a lot of time running into each other over the course of 3-4 weeks. And he didn't have enough time either. So he and I took the bus out to Muxia, and that way we got to see Muxia. And then we spent our last day, we walked from Muxia to Finisterre. And it's a good 30 plus kilometer walk. It's a good coastal walk. And then you walk right up to Finisterre. You feel like you've done a full day, and you get that sense of accomplishment. And that night at Finisterre was as spiritually refreshing and inspirational to me as Santiago Cathedral was. Both had their Thomas was the Danish guy, didn't believe in God. So he had told me that he got the spiritual feel, not that he was spiritual, but that sense of wonder from the experience in Finisterre. I told him I'm blessed because I got it in both places.
Yeah. Well, come here. When you think about it, the whole Camino de Santiago thing is a monumental fraud. You know, it was good forward thinking from the Spanish tourist board back in the 13th century, whatever. To convince people that the bones of
St. James.
whatever.
They were really looking ahead.
Hey, let's go there.
Yeah.
But really, it's so uplifting, when you, and it's the people, again, the people, as you're walking along, you're chatting with this person, you're finding out how life is there, what's your story, why are you walking, and everybody has their own reason for walking, and it's wonderful.
Yeah. It's the reason we're talking now is because of the connection we made on the Camino. And Marcel, from that picture just a few minutes ago, when I walked the Via Francigena, he came and found me in Italy one night, and we sat in a cafe in a little rural town in Italy, and then he took me out to his car, and he tried to hand me 2 bottles of wine to take with me. I told him, Marcel, it's hard enough to carry. I'll take 1. I'm not going to carry 2 bottles of wine.
Oh, that's gas. I just came across, I was clearing out some stuff the other day, and I came across a note himself, and I think it's Annika.
Yeah.
His neighbor. They left.
Anna Meets. It was Anna Meets. Yeah.
Oh,
That's right. Yeah. So I still have it here somewhere. It's like friends. We're moving on. So they got up and they walked off early one morning, and I don't know. Yeah, we did see them later on. But they're lovely people.
Very. It was good to see him again a couple years ago in Italy. And we've stayed in touch with a few of those folk. And I just remembered the name of the Finnish girl. It was Miriam Me.
That's it. Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Miriam Me. And I remember Gabriel and I kept saying, it's too bad we never got to see Miriam Me again. We never got to see Miriam. And then we keep talking about how the Camino provides, how things just tend to go your way on the Camino. So we get on the train, we're heading back to Madrid. I'm walking through the train car, and suddenly I hear Steve, and I turn, and it's her. And you figure for a good 3.5 weeks, I hadn't seen her. So obviously we'd been walking in tandem with one another,
Mm.
but out of sync in some place where we never connected one time. And then
Yeah.
suddenly, and she was so excited. She even said, "Oh, I was thinking I haven't got to see Steve and Gabriel again." And so we had a picture together on the train, and it was just a great way to kind of finish our Camino.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, myself and Noel and Norma, who walked together that year, we meet up every year. We go on a full day's walk. We meet up for a weekend, and we do walking. We have a meal, and we pick some part of the country. Like Noel's from the west, and it's fabulous walking over there. And yeah, so it's good to keep it alive.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. My long distance walking though is on hold until I get a new hip.
Really?
Yep.
Gosh,
Yeah,
it's getting you trouble.
Oh, my leg. Tammy will tell you.
Yeah, it's not great.
it's
Yeah.
really
He still pushes himself and gets in trouble with me. Like, what are you trying to prove?
I-
You're waiting for a new hip.
You walk from
Take it
Canterbury to
easy.
Rome, you have nothing more to prove.
Nothing
about
more to
how far you
prove.
can walk.
but
And is it directly walking Camino related, or would it happen anyway?
I think, to be honest, I think I walk funny. And after all the walking I've done, it's exacerbated it. So on my left hip, I've got no cartilage left. And it really, I'm hobbling bad. So I'm in the, we have like the NHS here in Hong Kong. So I'm in the queue. And
With COVID, it's even
with
slower.
COVID, it's been slower. So I'm actually scheduled to see the actual doctor to do this in August. Anyhow, so we're ibuprofen in it, but it would be really hard for me to do any Caminos.
Yes.
At about 10,000 steps, my leg's shot for the day.
Oh man, no. Sore. It sounds sore.
Yeah, it's hard because you know how much I love walking, but I do get up and I try to do my 10,000 a day. I'll walk some, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I should get that more. So tell me, how's your new venture going?
Oh, well, it's still a baby. I'm still in the learning curve for sure, but I'm enjoying
All I can
it.
say is it works for you. You're doing great. You're a good advertisement for it.
it's
Thank
my
you.
retirement plan.
That's you are a stinker. Yeah.
So yeah, she's doing
With,
really well.
with his enthusiasm behind me, how could I not?
Good.
Lots of
Look at there.
encouragement.
Good to have support.
Yeah.
Mhm. And Gabriel just wrote me a little bluesy riff
Yeah,
to
I've been
play
trying
in
to
my
come up with some
background music.
for her. Like their videos just have this kind of like a background, little
Yeah.
fun, smooth jazz stuff.
Brilliant.
See, if I move the
That's why I
mic,
did
that's why I did it. Is the oh, there we go. Okay,
Our connection.
not USB it. I got a guy that I've sent to university for sound engineering. I'm still using a USB. I
Yeah, I
need.
told you what you need.
He's gonna take me
Let's
to
go.
Tom Lee, the music
guys.
store here, and
Yeah, I can take you tomorrow.
get the proper equipment. So, Dearman, it's been so good to chat with you, man. Let's do it again. We'll do it. We can try to do a time where we can both drink some Guinness at the same time. It's not too early over there. We could do a later night, like if we do closer to like 10 or 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Do a weekend.
We could do that. We could do a weekend. Let's do this so we can talk some more politics too.
And dangerous topic.
Steve loves it.
I love it.
I've said too much already.
I love it. Anyhow, we end every excuse me.
Start over.
Yeah, we end every podcast with the salutation from the Camino, Buen Camino. So Buen Camino, Diarmuid.
Okay, those three.
Buen Camino.
Yes.
Come here.
Okay. All
Great.
right, guys.
That's the
Good catching
end.
up.